If you've seen any of our case study videos, you may have noticed that we almost always have people spending less as they age throughout their retirement. But does this actually happen? Is that actually true? Or is this just wishful thinking? Is it just gibberish? Well, since it has such an enormous impact on how much money we all have to squirrel away for our retirement, this is something that we better nail down. My name is Reese, and I am the founder of Well Built Wealth, and we do a ton of retirement plans. A ton. And one of the heaviest, most consequential variables in pretty much everyone's retirement plan is how much they are wanting or needing to spend throughout their retirement. Now, let me just show you very quickly exactly how heavy this is. Enter Betty and Eddie Teddy. Now, these two have a crazy backstory that you wouldn't even believe if I told you. But the only thing that we care about today is how much these two think they're going to need to spend throughout their retirement. Now, these two like to travel and they want to eat out from time to time, so they figure they're going to need $7,000 a month after tax throughout their retirement. And given all their details, which we're not going to get into, it looks like they're falling a little short. They are tracking at 90% of their retirement income goal. And what that means in plain English is that they could easily run out of money before they run out of time. In fact, it looks like they will run out of money 3 years before their life expectancy. And they don't like that. So I bring up the old go-go, slow-go, no-go concept. In the earlier phase of retirement, the go-go phase, you're up to all sorts of shenanigans. And shenanigans cost money. But as you get older, there tends to be less and less shenanigans. And so as you roll through the slow go and then ultimately the no-go phase, you simply aren't spending as much. So what would it look like if Betty and Eddie were to trim things back a bit as they got older? What if we trimmed $500 a month off during their slow go phase, taking it from $7,000 a month down to $6,500 a month? And then trimmed off another $500 a month during their no-go phase, taking them down to $6,000 a month. Well, look at that. That's a massive difference for them. It took them from 90% on track to 101% on track. Not only will they not run out of money in retirement, but now it looks like they're going to have a little bit of buffer. And they still get to do all of the shenanigans that they wanted to do in their go-go phase. Now, of course, there was all sorts of other things that we could have done financial planning-wise to try to improve their situation, but that's not at all the point. The point is the massive difference that it can make to your situation if you plan for a bit of a decrease in spending in the later years of your retirement. And you don't even need fancy financial planning software to do this. You can see this really clearly just using basic math. If they were to shave $500 a month off during their slow go phase, that would save them $6,000 a year. And if their slow go phase lasted from age 75 to 85, then that would be 10 years of spending $6,000 a year less. That's $60,000 that they just didn't need to come up with. That is a big deal. And if they did that again for their no-go phase, well, I think you get the idea. Okay, now all of that is cute, but again, is it actually true? Is this what's actually happening? Are people actually spending less as they age throughout their retirement? What about things like inflation or the cost of care when you're older? Or what if you actually have to move into a care home? The cost of that can be staggering. What about that? Those are very good questions. Let's hit inflation first. As long as we have monopoly money for our currency, we are going to have to deal with inflation. Now, mostly we experience this as the cost of things going up, but in reality, it's mostly actually the value of our currency going down. So it just takes more of our currency to buy the exact same things as time goes on. But in all of the projections that we do, our software already factors all of that in. So when we say that Betty and Eddie are going to drop from $7,000 a month to $6,500 a month once they hit their slow go phase, we're just saying it like that to keep it simple, to try to keep our brains from blowing up, trying to do the math of adding in compounding inflation for each year we go into the future. But in reality, it won't cost $6,500 a month in their slow go phase. Not by the time they get there. The currency will be worth way less. So it'll take more of it to buy the same things. And that's why these columns, which represent each year of income throughout their retirement, they are growing taller each year. Inflation is being accounted for and added in. Bottom line is this: we always factor in inflation, always, but we speak in terms of what things cost today to keep all of our minds from caving in on themselves. Okay, now on to the cost of care. This is probably the number one thing we see pushback on in the comments section of our videos whenever we use the go-go, slow-go, no-go approach. And it's a totally fair point. Some people are in care homes that cost a ton of money each month. And so the no-go phase can end up costing even more than the slow-go phase, and maybe even more than the go-go phase. And there's nothing really to argue here. The cost of care can get massive, but some of that is due to choice. We could spend a long time going over all the options, but instead, I'll just include a link below to this really helpful website that does a lot of that heavy lifting for us. They break down pricing by province, major cities, and even get into costs by care type. But what is also really helpful is how they include a section on figuring out the costs of continuing to live independently so that you can get a real solid sense of the spread. In some cases, the retirement community or care home could actually end up being the most affordable option, or at least within striking distance of what someone might already be spending. The bottom line is this: for many, getting long-term care or moving into assisted living or a full-on care home can actually get quite a bit more expensive, for sure. But for many, it doesn't, not at all. And another thing to consider is that this stage of life can last a really long time for some people, but for others, it doesn't. And so while the cost can go up for a period, sometimes that period just isn't that long. Regardless, when you are doing your own retirement plan, you can set your retirement income at whatever levels you like, and you can make as many stages as you like. Now, when I make videos, I try to make them as applicable as I can for as many people as possible, given the topic. But when we do custom financial planning for people, we're customizing it to their situation, of course. And we see all sorts of situation. But even after all the plans and all of the clients that we've dealt with in the years and years and years of seeing situations unfold, we can say this with confidence, is that for most people, we actually do see their spending go down, especially once they're north of age 75. And for some people, we actually see spending go way down. But let's not just take my word for it. Let's be nerds and let's look at some actual hard data. Now, I've looked at a whole bunch of different sources and I'll post the links below, but I don't want to belabor this. The data is clear. This article here sums it up quite nice. And really, this article is just the easy to digest synopsis of this massive study that was done by a crew of actuaries, and they eat data for breakfast. But I just want to draw your attention to this one particular graph. Yes, it shows how spending drops with age, but what is most interesting is that spending tends to drop for everyone, including those with tons of dough. And Fidelity, one of the biggest asset managers out there, has done some research on this as well, and they sum it up beautifully in this extremely easy to understand infographic. This article is great as well for showing the breakdown of the different spending categories and how they change with age. Sure, a lot of this data is from the US, but the Canadian data shows the same thing. It just wasn't as user-friendly to show, but I've got links posted below if you want to dig deeper. Anyway, all of that to say, the slow-go and no-go phases are a real thing. Chances are you will spend less after accounting for inflation as you enter the later stages of life. Now, you don't have to spend less. You can spend as much as you like. And if accounting for high-end care in the later years of your life is important to you, then by all means, plan for it. That is a totally reasonable goal. But statistically, most people can expect their expenses to drop throughout their retirement. Okay, now you may be sick of my face at this point, so feel free to click away if you want, but I do have something funny to show you if you feel like sticking around for a sec. It's a total sidebar. But because we have a YouTube channel, we get all sorts of gibberish coming in at us. People wanting to sell us stuff, people wanting us to sell their stuff, etc., etc. And I normally just delete it. But then I got this one, and I pretty much spit out my coffee. A hair transplant clinic based out of Turkey is offering me the following: a trip to Istanbul with accommodation, a comprehensive hair transplant, and I can bring a friend. And depending on my reach, they may even chuck in some money for me. And all they want from me is one little YouTube vlog to document the trip, 6 YouTube shorts so everyone can see the progress of my hair growth, and one more wrap-up video after a year. I can be my very own chia pet.